Alrighty, hello YouTube, welcome to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, I go by the YouTube handle Cryptic Lovecraft. And in today's video, I'm going to tell you a story that I call This Is Not Metal. Alright, and it's kind of a play on Comedy Central's series This Is Not Happening, hosted by Ari Shafir. So if you're familiar with that series, then you know that comedians will tell you stories about like an event that happened in their lives, and it's titled This Is Not Happening. So since I'm a metalhead, my story is called This Is Not Metal. Alright, and this is one of the least metal moments in my entire life. Alright, so let's hop in a time machine and go back to like the mid-90s, to when I was in 6th grade. I think I was like 11 years old, maybe 12 tops, but I think I was 11. Alright, so it was like a Friday night, and I was up a little bit late. My parents and I were watching The Tonight Show with Jay Leno on NBC, and Jay Leno brought out his musical guest, and it was these three kids. They were brothers. They were a band called Hanson, right? And this was their album at the time, The Middle of Nowhere, featuring hit songs like MMMBop and Where's the Love. Alright, so I thought it was really cool, okay? I mean, I did. I was like, oh wow, look, there's three kids who are around my age, and they're brothers, and they're on The Tonight Show, and they're making a living playing rock and roll, and they have long hair, and they play their own instruments, and the girls are going crazy for them. I thought it was really cool. And even my dad can be like really macho and like just be a hater, sipping on the haterade all the time. And even he thought it was cool. He was like, oh wow, it's been a long time since I've seen a bunch of brothers start a band. And I was like, these guys are like my age, and they're already living the dream, and they're playing their own instruments, and they have long hair, and this is so cool. And so it just so happened I got my allowance that day, and the next day my parents took me to Hastings, and I decided I wanted to spend my allowance. And they had a Hanson shirt, a middle of nowhere shirt, and it was in my size. And I thought to myself, you know what, I'd like to support that band, good for them. So I bought the shirt, and I decided that come Monday I was going to wear it to school. And that's where This Is Not Metal begins, because that whole day was like a nightmare that I could not escape from. Okay, I still can't escape from it. I still remember, okay? Like, I showed up on the, school grounds, and it was like right before first period started, and heads turned, okay? And people were like, oh my God, like, why are you wearing that shirt? And it just didn't stop. Like, every class I went to, somebody had to like take a jab or make a crack or take a shot. And in between passing periods, like walking up and down the halls, like as all of the students tried to get to their next class, people were just like ripping on me, and it just didn't end. And it was like in the middle of class, it was in the hallways during passing period, it was at lunch. It just didn't stop. And I think only like 3 dudes might have told me, hey, I like your shirt or whatever, but it was mostly just hate. And there were some girls who were into the band, but I learned a valuable lesson that day. And the lesson that I learned was that it's okay for girls to like certain, musical acts, and it wasn't okay for boys to like certain musical acts. That was the 90s for you. So, one of the worst moments that I remember was, like I said, I was in 6th grade, and at this middle school, it was 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, okay? That was, that was the age group of the kids who attended that school. So, I remember there was this, like, 8th grade guy, and I'd seen him around before, never really talked to him or anything. But like when you're in 6th grade, the 8th graders, they just seem so grown up and so mature to you for whatever reason, right? And so like if you were ever around an 8th grader, you tried extra hard to be cool because you wanted them to like you, you wanted them to think you were cooler than the average sixth grader or whatever. And so I remember I saw this one eighth grade kid, and he was tall, he was bald, he was wearing a spiked dog collar, he was wearing these baggy black Jinkos, because those were in at the time, and he was wearing the Ozzy shirt where Ozzy was hitchhiking to hell, if I remember correctly. And I remember, like, in between passing periods, he saw me, and he comes and he gets in my face, and he goes, "Yeah, Hanson!" Blah! And then he just like walks away, and him and his friends are all laughing, and I'm just standing there like, uber embarrassed because I've been getting my butt kicked all day over this stupid shirt, right? And so, him and his friends are walking away, and there was a part of me that was like, "Hey, wait, come back. I'm so much cooler than this, really, like, I want to hang out sometime." And it just never happened. So I never wore the shirt again. I gave it to a female cousin. She got a little bit of heat for it when she wore it, but nowhere near to the degree that I did, right? And I never escaped it. I never lived it down. Even like the next school year in seventh grade, I would still periodically get people who would come up to me and be like, "Hey, aren't you the guy that wore the Hanson shirt to school last year?" Okay, I didn't even get to live it down until I moved out of state, okay, like over Christmas break of seventh grade. Yeah, okay, I mean, that was just like one of the worst decisions I ever made pertaining to my social status, right? So then I ended up moving to another state, and I remember I started this new school, and I go to my first period class, and about 5 minutes after class starts, the assistant principal brings in this kid with long blonde hair, and the assistant principal tells the teacher, "Excuse me, Miss whatever, you have a new student, he's a transfer." And so this kid with long blonde hair enters the room, and he just takes a seat, and, it's his first day, and he's already 5 minutes late to his first class, and when the door opened and he's standing there with the principal, all eyes were on him, and, he's probably a little tense, a little bit, uh, uneasy, a little anxious. So he finally makes it into the room, and he grabs a seat, and there's this goth kid, not me, a different one, right? And he's got like long hair, kind of not as nowhere near as long as mine, but like his hair was like a mop, and it was like in his eyes, and so that long-haired blonde kid sits down, and that goth kid just blurts out, "MMMBop," and the whole class starts laughing. But yeah, so that's my story. This is not metal. But you know what? I don't care. I still like Hanson, alright? I mean, are they my favorite band? No. Have I listened to them in the last 20 years? No, it's been just over 20 years, okay? Um, I still think it was cool that they got famous as kids, and they got to be rock musicians and stuff like that. And the fact that, like, all the girls liked them. I mean, good for them. I was never, like, on that haterade. I don't know why the hell everyone else felt the need to get on the hate train. I guess it was just jealousy. I mean, it was also fashionable to hate Leonardo DiCaprio back then, too. And I think it's just because he was young, successful, and the girls liked him. And it takes guys, time. Most guys don't get to kind of experience even a fraction of that until they're, like, my age in their mid-30s. And so I think it was just kind of hate that someone got to cut in line. And I think that's where the hate came from. I also found out it wasn't cool for me to like NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys, which is funny because now, like, metalcore has taken over, and metalcore is a huge genre, and YouTube's in everybody's life, and all these metalcore YouTube musicians do like metalcore covers of like the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and stuff, and everyone's cool with it these days. But back then, man, I mean, it was, I don't even know what to call it. Like, the threat was real. It was like, no, you were not allowed to like what you liked. And if you did, you had to keep it on the DL. So that's my story. This is not metal.